Culture and Imperialism is a seminal work by Edward Said, a Palestinian-American literary theorist and cultural critic. The book, published in 1993, expands upon the ideas presented in his earlier work, Orientalism. In Culture and Imperialism, Said explores the relationship between culture and imperialism, focusing on the ways in which literature and other forms of cultural expression are implicated in the power structures of imperialism. Key points from Culture and Imperialism. Imperialism and culture. Said argues that imperialism is not only a political and economic system but also a cultural one. He contends that literature and culture play a crucial role in shaping and sustaining imperialist ideologies. Imperialism in literature. Said examines a range of literary works, primarily from the Western canon, to illustrate how they contribute to and reflect the imperialist mindset. He looks at novels, poems, and other forms of literature to reveal how they are implicated in the imperialist project. Colonial discourse. The book explores the concept of colonial discourse, referring to the ways in which colonial powers represented and justified their dominance through language and culture. Said argues that literature is a significant part of this discourse. Resistance and counter-discourse. While critiquing the imperialist tendencies in literature, Said also highlights instances of resistance and counter-discourse within cultural production. He suggests that writers and artists can challenge and subvert imperialist narratives. Postcolonial perspectives. Said's work has been influential in the development of postcolonial studies, a field that examines the legacies of colonialism and imperialism. He emphasizes the importance of understanding the cultural dimensions of imperialism for a comprehensive analysis of its impact. Interconnectedness of cultures. Said emphasizes the interconnectedness of cultures and argues for a more nuanced understanding of cultural exchange and hybridity. He challenges the notion of a clear divide between the East and the West. Culture and Imperialism is considered a foundational text in postcolonial studies and has had a significant impact on literary theory, cultural studies, and the study of imperialism. It encourages scholars to critically examine the role of culture in perpetuating and challenging systems of power and domination. Here are some key features of Culture and Imperialism by Edward Said, along with examples to illustrate these concepts. Imperialist literature analysis. Example: Said analyzes Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness to demonstrate how literature can reflect and perpetuate imperialist ideologies. He discusses how the novel portrays European colonialism in Africa and the dehumanizing effects of imperialism on both the colonizers and the colonized. Colonial discourse. Example: Said explores how British literature, particularly works like Rudyard Kipling's Kim and E.M. Forster's A Passage to India, contributes to the colonial discourse by representing the East in a way that justifies and reinforces imperial dominance. Counter-discourse and resistance. Example: Said discusses how post-colonial writers like Chinua Achebe challenge and subvert imperialist narratives. Achebe's Things Fall Apart offers a counter-discourse by presenting the perspective of the colonized people and critiquing the impact of imperialism on traditional African societies. Cultural hybridity. Example: Said emphasizes the blending of cultures and identities. Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children is an example of a novel that explores cultural hybridity, incorporating elements of both Indian and Western cultures to create a unique narrative that challenges simplistic dichotomies. Interconnectedness of cultures. Example: Said argues against the idea of a rigid East-West dichotomy. He cites the works of Edward W. Said himself, who was both an Arab and an American, as an example of the interconnectedness of cultures and the complexity of individual identities. Literary critique as political action. Example: Said contends that literary critique is not merely an academic exercise but a form of political action. By critically examining and challenging imperialist representations in literature, scholars can contribute to a broader awareness of power structures and promote social change. Postcolonial studies framework. Example: Culture and Imperialism is foundational to the field of postcolonial studies. Scholars in this field use Said's ideas to analyze various forms of cultural expression, including literature, film, and art, to understand the enduring effects of colonialism on societies and individuals. These examples illustrate how Edward Said's Culture and Imperialism provides a framework for analyzing cultural products within the context of imperialism, emphasizing the role of literature in shaping and reflecting imperialist ideologies and the potential for resistance and counter-narratives. Culture and Imperialism explores several themes related to the intersection of culture and imperialism. Here are some key themes from the book, along with examples that illustrate each theme. Orientalism and representation. Example: Said critiques the Western construction of the Orient as exotic, mysterious, and inferior in contrast to the Occident. He analyzes how this Orientalist representation is reflected in various literary works, such as Flaubert's, Salammbô, and Kipling's The Man Who Would Be King. Colonial discourse and power structures. Example: The book delves into how literature and other cultural forms contribute to colonial discourse, shaping and reinforcing power structures. For instance, Shakespeare's plays, particularly The Tempest, are examined to reveal how they articulate colonial ideologies and the exercise of power. Resistance and subversion. Example: Said explores instances of resistance and subversion within literature. The works of post-colonial authors like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, particularly Petals of Blood, are analyzed to illustrate how writers challenge and subvert imperialist narratives, asserting the agency of colonized peoples. Narratives of home and exile. Example: Said reflects on the theme of home and exile in the context of imperialism. The poetry of Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish, such as Memory for Forgetfulness, is used to explore the experiences of displacement, longing for home, and the impact of colonialism on individual and collective identities. Cultural hybridity and syncretism. Example: The concept of cultural hybridity is discussed, and Rushdie's The Satanic Verses is examined for its portrayal of a protagonist caught between multiple cultural and religious identities, reflecting the blending and negotiation of diverse cultural elements. Nationalism and decolonization. Example: Said addresses the themes of nationalism and decolonization, exploring how literature reflects the struggles for independence. Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth is referenced to analyze the role of literature in the process of decolonization and the formation of post-colonial national identities. Globalization and cultural imperialism. Example: Said's discussion extends to the contemporary context of globalization. He examines how multinational corporations, media, and popular culture contribute to cultural imperialism. The spread of Western consumer culture and its impact on local cultures are explored through various examples. Intellectual responsibility and activism. Example: Said emphasizes the intellectual's responsibility to engage in activism and critique. He draws on his own experiences as a public intellectual and activist in addressing issues related to Palestine, advocating for justice, and challenging imperialist policies. These themes and examples illustrate how culture and imperialism encompasses a broad range of topics, providing a comprehensive analysis of the intricate connections between culture and the imperialist project across different historical periods and geographical contexts. Let's delve into a brief analysis of some key aspects of Culture and Imperialism by Edward Said, along with crucial comments. Critique of Orientalism. Analysis. Said builds on his earlier work, Orientalism, to critique the Western construction of the Orient as a passive, exotic, and inferior other. He argues that this Orientalist discourse serves imperialist agendas by reinforcing stereotypes and justifying colonial domination. Crucial comment. Said's critique of Orientalism challenges the way Western scholarship and literature have portrayed the East, emphasizing the need for a more nuanced and self-aware understanding of cultural representations. Literature is a reflection of power. Analysis. Said explores how literature is a reflection of power structures, analyzing how works like Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness and Shakespeare's The Tempest articulate imperialist ideologies. He contends that literature is not a passive mirror but an active participant in shaping and sustaining imperialism. Crucial comment. This perspective underscores the importance of critically examining literary works for their role in perpetuating or challenging imperialist narratives, encouraging readers to be conscious of the ideological implications of cultural production. Cultural hybridity and identity. Analysis. Said introduces the concept of cultural hybridity, emphasizing the interconnectedness of cultures. He examines works like Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children to illustrate how cultural blending and negotiation challenge simplistic East-West dichotomies. Crucial comment. The idea of cultural hybridity challenges essentialist notions of identity and offers a more dynamic understanding of how cultures evolve through interaction and exchange, promoting a richer appreciation of diversity. Role of literature in resistance. Analysis. Said highlights literature as a potential site of resistance against imperialism. He discusses how post-colonial authors like Ngugi wa Thiong'o use their works, such as Petals of Blood, to subvert imperialist narratives and assert the agency of colonized peoples. Crucial comment. This aspect emphasizes the transformative power of literature and art in challenging oppressive systems, encouraging writers to engage in forms of creative expression that resist and critique imperialist structures. Intellectual responsibility and activism. Analysis. Said argues that intellectuals have a responsibility to engage in activism and critique, drawing on his own experiences as a public intellectual. He stresses the importance of intellectuals taking a stand on political and social issues. Crucial comment. This call to intellectual responsibility challenges the notion of detached scholarship, encouraging academics and thinkers to actively contribute to social and political change, reflecting Said's commitment to justice and human rights. Globalization and contemporary relevance. Analysis. Said extends his analysis to contemporary issues, examining the impact of globalization on cultural imperialism. He explores how multinational corporations and global media contribute to the spread of Western consumer culture. Crucial comment. By addressing contemporary issues, Said emphasizes the ongoing relevance of his work and the need for scholars to analyze how cultural imperialism manifests in the ever-evolving global context. In Culture and Imperialism, Said provides a multidimensional analysis that remains influential in literary theory, post-colonial studies, and cultural criticism. His crucial comments challenge readers to critically engage with cultural products, question power structures, and actively participate in the pursuit of a more just and equitable world. Culture and Imperialism, by Edward Said holds significant relevance and importance in several academic and intellectual domains. Here are key aspects that highlight its significance. Foundational text in postcolonial studies. Significance. The book is a foundational text in the field of postcolonial studies, influencing scholars and researchers across disciplines. It provides a theoretical framework for understanding the lasting impact of imperialism on culture, literature, and identity. Critique of cultural imperialism. Relevance. Said's critique of cultural imperialism remains relevant in the context of globalization. His analysis of how Western cultural forms influence and shape societies worldwide contributes to discussions on the power dynamics of cultural representation. Interconnectedness of cultures. Importance. The emphasis on the interconnectedness of cultures challenges simplistic dichotomies and promotes a more nuanced understanding of cultural exchange. This is crucial for fostering appreciation and respect for diverse perspectives in a globalized world. Literature is a political act. Significance. Said's assertion that literary critique is a form of political engagement challenges traditional notions of literature as purely aesthetic. This perspective encourages scholars to see literature as a powerful tool for social critique and activism. Challenge to Orientalism. Relevance. Said's critique of Orientalism remains relevant as it prompts ongoing discussions about representation and stereotypes in Western discourse about the East. It encourages scholars to critically assess and reevaluate cultural narratives. Resistance and subversion in literature. Importance. The exploration of resistance and subversion in literature provides a model for understanding how cultural production can be a form of activism. This aspect is crucial for inspiring writers and artists to engage in work that challenges oppressive systems. Globalization and cultural hegemony. Relevance. The analysis of globalization and cultural hegemony is highly relevant in today's world, where the influence of multinational corporations and global media continues to shape cultural landscapes. Said's insights help us understand the complexities of cultural interactions in a global context. Intellectual responsibility. Importance. The call for intellectual responsibility and activism is important for scholars to recognize the ethical dimensions of their work. It encourages intellectuals to actively engage with societal issues and contribute to positive change. Legacy and influence. Significance. The enduring influence of culture and imperialism is evident in its impact on subsequent scholarship. Many scholars, across various disciplines, continue to draw on Said's ideas, demonstrating the enduring significance of his work. In summary, Culture and Imperialism remains a significant and influential work due to its foundational role in postcolonial studies, its critique of cultural imperialism, and its broader impact on how we understand the relationship between culture, literature, and power. Its relevance persists in discussions about representation, globalization, and the responsibilities of intellectuals in today's complex world. Culture and Imperialism, 1993, by Edward Said, is a collection of thematically related essays that trace the connection between imperialism and culture throughout the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. The essays expand the arguments of Orientalism to describe general patterns of relation between the modern metropolitan Western world and their overseas colonial territories. In the work, Said explored the impact British novelists such as Jane Austen, Joseph Conrad, E.M. Forster, and Rudyard Kipling had on the establishment and maintenance of the British Empire, too, and how colonization, anti-imperialism, and decolonization influenced Western literature during the 19th and 20th centuries. 3. In the beginning of the work, Said claims that the Daniel Defoe novel Robinson Crusoe, published in 1719, set the precedent for such ideas in Western literature, the novel being about a European man who travels to the Americas and establishes a fiefdom in a distant, non-European island. 4. As the connection between culture and empire, literature has the power to narrate, or to block other narratives from forming and emerging, which might contradict the colonization of a people. 5. Hence he analyzes cultural objects to understand how imperialism functions, for the enterprise of empire depends upon the idea of having an empire, and all kinds of preparations are made for it within a culture. Then, in turn, imperialism acquires a kind of coherence, a set of experiences, and a presence of ruler and ruled alike within the culture. 6. Imperialism is the practice, the theory, and the attitudes of a dominating metropolitan center ruling a distant territory. 7. His definition of culture is more complex, but he strongly suggests that we ought not to forget imperialism when discussing it. Of his overall motive, Said states, "The novels and other books I consider here I analyze because first of all I find them estimable and admirable works of art and learning, in which I and many other readers take pleasure and from which we derive profit. Second, the challenge is to connect them not only with that pleasure and profit but also with the imperial process of which they were manifestly and unconsoledly a part. Rather than condemning or ignoring their participation in what was an unquestioned reality in their societies, I suggest that what we learn about this hitherto ignored aspect actually and truly enhances our reading and understanding of them." 8. The title is thought to be a reference to two older works, Culture and Anarchy 1867-68, by Matthew Arnold and Culture and Society 1958 by Raymond Williams. 9. Said argues that, although the Age of Empire largely ended after the Second World War, when most colonies gained independence, imperialism continues to exert considerable cultural influence in the present. To be aware of this fact, it is necessary, according to Said, to look at how colonialists and imperialists employed culture to control distant land and peoples. Synopsis. Edit. Said argues that cultural productions such as literature, music, and art are shaped by the political and economic context in which they are produced. He argues that imperialism has played a significant role in shaping Western culture, and that many works of art and literature can be seen as reflections or products of imperialism. He also explores the ways in which imperialism has been represented in cultural productions, such as novels and films, and argues that these representations have often been used to justify and perpetuate imperialism. He highlights the importance of examining cultural productions in their historical and political context, and argues that doing so can reveal the complex ways in which culture and power are intertwined. The book covers a range of topics, from the impact of colonialism on the works of Joseph Conrad and Jane Austen, to the ways in which Western films have depicted the East. Chapter 1. Overlapping Territories, Intertwined Histories. Said says that West has positioned itself as a self-evidently superior, independently developed culture that naturally should share its civilization with inferior others via colonization, which is almost always a product of imperialism. Non-European cultures are therefore assigned a secondary status, which is paradoxically necessary for the supposed primacy of Western culture. Said argues for reading the literary canon with an awareness of these intertwined histories that support the expansion of Western supremacy. Chapter 2. Consolidated Vision. Edit. Said surveys several canonical works to argue that they support imperialism by the way they ignore or amplify certain narratives, including works of Rudyard Kipling, Jane Austen, Giuseppe Verdi and Albert Camus. Chapter 3. Resistance and Opposition. Edit. Resistance to imperialism is oftentimes ignored in the Western narrative, but nevertheless, real. The voice of the colonized is not heard in the colony until independence is achieved. Said critiques the formation of a monolithic nationalism to replace a former colonial polity, instead drawing attention to the diversity and complexity of the individuals in the territory. He posits that peoples have multiple overlapping identities and shared heritages compared to the divisiveness required by the imperial project. Chapter 4. Freedom from Domination in the Future. Edit. The United States has replaced Europe as the self-appointed guardian of a purported superior Western civilization, and the narratives of European civilizing mission continue to this day with its center in North America. Said laments this development and believes that imperialism will not cease until we understand that no culture can claim to be superior to others, claim international authority, or direct the destinies of inferior others. Said believes that diversity is valuable and complex and cannot be reduced to simple identity symbiology. Said indicts public intellectuals in their silence towards the continuing narrative of Western exceptionalism and superiority. He exhorts them to transcend their national interests and see common interests and values across the rest of the world. Edward Said was considered one of the most important literary critics and philosophers of the late 20th century. Culture and Imperialism was hailed as long-awaited and seen as a direct successor to his main work, Orientalism. While the New York Times Review notes the book's heavy resemblance to a collection of lectures, it concludes that, yet the telegraphic style does not finally mar either the usefulness of Culture and Imperialism, or its importance. 9. The book is seen as a classic study. 11. And has influenced many later authors, books and articles. 12. 13. Philosopher and social anthropologist Ernest Gellner criticized Said for exploiting Western guilt. About imperialism. 14.